Hey, welcome today to Workstream's webinar. Today we are joined by a multi-unit Jack in the Box franchisee, Philip. Philip, thanks so much for joining us. I guess, why don't we just kick off, maybe you could provide a little bit of background about how you got into the industry and sort of what has changed over the last 30 years.
Yeah, so my name is Philip Hsia, and so I run 7 Jack in the Boxes with my father. And so he was the one that got started in the industry in 1989. And so he's been around for 30 plus years. And I joined in 2012 after law school. And
Cool.
so I've been running for the last 8 years with him.
That's amazing. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes during that time. One of the things that Jack in the Box has done incredibly well is pushing sort of the food, food safety, doing that first with the coli, now with COVID. Could you chat a little bit about how that has been implemented and what your typical training processes are?
Yeah, so they actually are doing pretty well in the training for COVID. So they were right at the beginning when COVID happened. They've already started with the supply chain to secure masks, and other supplies for all the restaurants. And so once we had, supply chain as they came in, so all our employees, once we started COVID happened, we've already had masks for all our employees through the drive-through. And for us, once the restaurants were shut down, dining rooms were shut down, and went drive-through only, we quickly, saw that we went to plexiglasses, and they had like this whole packet of kind of procedures. And so from anywhere from cleaning routines, so they have your standard cleaning routines, and they have different colors for different situations and what you need to clean. So they actually have different like codes. And so if you have somebody that, has been exposed, then you're, this code and you have to do this kind of cleaning. And if you're, somebody in the restaurant tests positive, you have this level of cleaning and this is the procedure you have to do.
And you're using the pod system right now to split up shifts. How's that
Correct.
going?
Yeah, so it's different, it's an adjustment, but I think for our safety of our teams, so every shift stays in its own pod and they work with their same people. And so I think it gives our employees a lot of comfort in the sense that, they're not mixing, and it's the chance of being exposed are a lot smaller with the pod. And, they kind of work with the same team. And so they start getting that kind of continuity with the same team as well. So initially, they were hesitant because it's something new, but now I think they're starting to like it because, you always know who you're going to work with, the same people. And so you kind of accountability for each other's safety. And so they know who, I know the 5 other people on my shift. And so, they can have conversations and say, hey, everyone's staying safe. Okay. And they can kind of hold each other accountable with masks, cleaning, sanitizer, hand wash. They feel more comfortable like talking to the people on their shift versus if you get moved around at different shifts or overlaps, I may not know this person. And if I see them not, washing their hands properly or their mask is down, I may not want to say something. But if I've been working with the same people, it's usually more comfortable to be like, hey, mask, something like that, and then kind of correct and keep everyone safe. So.
And how long are the typical shift hours?
Yeah, so depending on the restaurants, they're open different times. We've had to adjust hours accordingly, to drive-through schedules and things like that. But typically, yeah, 8 hours.
Okay. And one of the first questions that's come in from an attendee is, are there any aspects of hiring that have become more difficult as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, definitely. I think we used a lot of walk-in and word of mouth before Workstream. And so even that we still rely on, all 3 now, I guess we say, the more the merrier, but a lot of the walk-ins and word of mouth has been going down and people have been moving more online. And so we've started getting a lot more online applications than I guess in person or walk-in, because not too many people are, just want to walk in and hang out.
There's no foot traffic. You can't walk
exactly.
in. It's all drive-through now.
And so I know everyone's in different places around the country, but for Santa Clara County and in the Bay Area, San Francisco, they have, you're required to post the amount of people that can be in your restaurant at a time. And it's actually one person per 150 square feet of space. So really most, spaces are a couple hundred square feet for the guest facing. So you're maybe having 3 or 4 people at most. And so, when you have a line for kind of walk-in ordering, you probably typically aren't going to have someone wait in line just to drop off or pick up an application.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And, another question that came in is, have you had to let any people go or furlough due to COVID?
So fortunately, due to the nature of the drive-through and Jack in the Box system, we haven't had to furlough anyone. We're very fortunate in the sense that because we have our drive-throughs, we've been, continuously going. We had to, let people go or people, and I think that's just a typical, not due to COVID, just the typical, turnover of restaurants. Either they, quit or we had to let them go due to various other situations. But yeah, not through COVID, fortunately.
What is the typical turnover for, your restaurants, Jack in the Box? I hear the industry standard is like 130%.
Yeah.
So high.
I think for us, it's a little better than that. I don't know how much better. I can, give a certain number, but I think because we do a lot of referrals, and, we offer kind of like a referral bonus as one of the avenues of kind of obtaining people. So usually through referral, it's a lot lower, but I would say typically kind of through other methods are, I would say roughly around just kind of the same 100%, I'm sure.
Yeah, and what is the referral bonus, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so basically so for each avenue, we kind of allocate amount of money we're going to spend on how to obtain and retain people. And so instead of kind of, let's say you have the money you would spend, doing certain, reach out campaign, we take that money and say, hey, if anyone can, fill these 5 positions, then let's say $250 we were going to spend on that marketing campaign or the hiring campaign, we will give it to $50 each, or 25 for each, the new person, the new hire and the referral, or 50 for each person referring. And so we'd send that out to all our employees, and then they would, ask around and see. And so if they do hire and they stay for, I think, 3 months, then they would get that bonus.
Okay, makes sense. And another question that came in is, are you doing any video interviews or, even phone interviews? You guys have an interesting system where you have actual, store level cell phones. Have you been using them at all in the interview process?
We have not. We do phone interviews. Mm-hmm. And so it would actually start, I guess, yeah, you're right. So we start with the managers and they would do phone interviews. And then now it's just mainly from the manager to the district manager now. And so instead of one phone interview with the manager and then an in-person with the manager, it's now just become a phone interview with the manager and then a phone interview with the district manager.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things, sort of in the pre-webinar conversation, we were chatting about texting as a way for, people to stay in touch. How is texting typically used?
Yeah, so we, made the decision before because we kind of saw the importance of texting. So we have store level cell phones. Mm-hmm. And so each store has their own cell phone now. So if there's an incident or an issue, they can take a picture of it with the cell phone now too. And they can start sending texts to their manager. So obviously the manager takes only one shift and then the shift leaders are the rest of the shifts. And so we kind of rely on, all the employees to use the cell phones. So we use them for all sorts of situations, and from like incidents, like if a customer has, an issue and they have to, you report it, or we have a celebration and, they want to take a picture and share it to the rest of the stores. We have, ones for communications as well. So
that's awesome. And with the referral program and the other sort of things you're doing, how are you tracking that? Are you able to sort of understand where the people are coming in, and how is retention tied to it?
Yeah, so we track it through our payroll service. So they're the ones that pass out the bonus. And so we can actually see who referred. So we have like who is referring and then how much they're getting. And yeah, so typically they have to work for 3 months before they the person referring can. So the new employee has to work 3 months before the person referring can get their bonus. And so I think retention's quite high. So for us, typically, if you can make it past the first month, then the chances of you staying are quite high. And so, yeah, so I think once they make it to the 3-month mark, we do our evaluation at around the 3-month mark for the new employee. And we decide, we want to continue with this employee, then the, referrer would get the bonus, and then the employee would, obviously keep working.
Yeah, and how do you guys incentivize people to keep their training going and learn new things? With Jack in the Box having such a vast menu, how do you get people to continually grow and learn new things?
I think that's one of the unique challenges of Jack in the Box as a kind of brand, is because they have so many items that a lot of it contributes to kind of the turnover, where sometimes it's just so overwhelming, right? So when you first get there and you see there's 150 menu items and each one has their own policy, basically procedure and safety that goes with it, a lot of times it's very overwhelming. I think we just try to break it down as much as we can in just kind of, for us, we usually start everyone off on cleaning, just because, that's something that most people know how to do, regardless of where you've been. And so you start there, and then, we kind of ask them, when they come into Jack in the Box, what kind of position they're interested in. And then we, take, let's say, the fryer position, and then you break that down even further, right? So you see like, okay, where can someone contribute early on, and then really bring them in slowly. So that's the practical. And then Jack in the Box has a great iPad training system that they're always kind of pushing over their updates on. And when they have new kind of strategies, videos, things like that, then they'll put them onto the iPad. And so the employee will usually split their new, time. We have like a 2-week kind of, mini course where we, lead them through, like they would spend time on the iPad and then on a station, and then iPad station, so they can get both educational and practical experience.
Yeah, one question that just came in now, I think it's top of mind for a lot of people given what's going on in the world, is,
Okay.
how does Jack in the Box, how do you guys think about the importance of diversity in the workplace?
Yeah, so I think for diversity, I think we try to you just welcome and everyone, to apply. And I think for diversity, we just try our best to kind of be professional. I think that's the ultimate standard, is being professional and kind of treating everyone the same. And so holding yourself to a certain high level standard and professionalism, and not giving, certain people favors and, things like that. And treating, one group different, because I think if you give one person a favor, you almost have to do it every time. Otherwise, the next time, so basically, whether it's a customer interaction and you say, hey, I'm going to give you this one time, then the next time they come back and they say, how come I didn't get this? Right. And so whether it's, positive or negative, I think we want to have our employees keep that same level of professionalism. And then nobody can kind of say like, oh, you were playing favorites to one person, or, trying to harm another group. And you're like, this is our standard, you're professional. And I know kind of it's not the, like, of course you want to give people extras and benefits, but I think in our kind of line of work,
I think equality is really important.
Yeah, I think professionalism's a little boring of a word, but I think it's truly kind of, even from kind of my, legal background, I tend to kind of be a little more conservative and safe and say, yes, I know we want to give everyone that extra service, that extra bonus, but, for me, it's hard enough to hit that professional standard. And so if we can consistently, meet that professional standard, then I think you won't run into any issues. You may not be the favorite, but you're not going to run into any negatives as well, because nobody can accuse you of either one, right? Being giving favors and versus not. So
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a lot of great points there. How do you guys do sort of management hiring and looking for managers so you can train them up on and make sure they are being professionals?
Yeah, so we have kind of review processes. We have kind of I think the relationship. So our district managers have been with us for 10 to 15 years. So one has been, I think, around 10 and one has been 15.
Oh,
And
wow.
so there's a lot of trust there. Um, and a lot of actually, like, most of our managers have been 10 years. So fortunately, the last store purchase we've made was in 2010. And so we haven't had too many manager turnovers, and we haven't expanded. So we haven't necessarily, you know, um, grown and gotten new managers. And so it's been a little while since we've had a new manager kind of process. But I think if we were to, let's say, acquire more restaurants or bring on different managers, we kind of do it by committee. So, we would take our managers and kind of see what skills are, we usually often ask, our managers and district managers, what skills do you think you would need to be successful, right? And then we take that as an assessment and then kind of overlay it to this new manager.
Hmm. Cool.
And then same with district managers, like, what do you think is successful for a manager? And then we'd get their list. And then we've also talked to, our shift leaders and employees of what they'd like to see in a manager. And so we have like 4 lists of people, like qualities and traits that each group wants to see. And we kind of try to take a look and meld those together into one kind of perfect, you know what I mean? Like more perfect manager where everyone would be happy with,
Yeah.
and use that kind of as the standard. And then,
What are
when we
some of those
train.
traits that, especially with the team and shift lead level, what are the
So
qualities they look for?
I think the biggest one, I think, on all 4 is communication. So, we want people that can communicate well. And so whether it's, yeah, communicating with your, team, right? So encouraging them, um, kind of making the right decisions on, let's say, if they did make a mistake, not like yelling at them in front of everyone, kind of taking them into just, obviously noting it and then talking to them later on. Um, Communicate about, say, hey, this shift's going to be really busy, like, everyone get ready, just the communication overall is our kind of number one. Trust, obviously the team leaders need to trust that the managers are trying, and kind of all leadership is trying to do what's best for them, right? So the things that we do are always aimed towards what's the best, how can I help my, for us as leadership, we say, how can I help my managers? And then we tell our managers, say, what can you do on a daily basis to help your team, right? And so I think, that kind of goes with communication, but it's that trust, knowing that their kind of job is to support you. The people above you's job is to support you, because ultimately, we know that the customers and our daily, employees are the ones that are bringing all the revenue.
Mhm.
Right? So the stuff that I'm doing on a daily basis isn't generating revenue. And so if you have to really see, like, okay, the employees in the front lines, they're the ones generating revenue. So we're really there to support them and serve them, right? And so if every leadership position says, okay, our job is to support you, and actually the people in the front are kind of like the most important people, and they feel that all their needs have been met, then you're gonna have more, I think, more harmony, I guess, within your
Makes a
team.
lot of sense. One question that came in from Sasha is, how does your hiring process vary from your competitors? Because you've been with Jack in the Box for a long time. How do
Yeah.
you think it varies from other QSRs?
I think one, I guess the industry standard is Chick-fil-A, and so we've actually done a lot of kind of studies into different QSRs, obviously, to look at the competitors and what they do. And one of the things that Chick-fil-A does specifically, that for customer service, that's always stuck with me, because we've seen videos, we obtain videos of, so what they do is they actually play a video of a scenario for their, I guess, customer service team
Mhm.
about kind of humanize the customers. And so, they said, they had a story of, a customer who had, maybe just lost a loved one or had all these different scenarios, and they're coming to Chick-fil-A or Jack in the Box, and and then this customer service employee gives them great service, and all of a sudden it turns around their day, and it turns something bad. And so it kind of humanizes the customer, because sometimes being on the other side with our employees, they see 400 people a day, 500 people, 500 customers go through a restaurant a day, if not more. And so they're seeing 100, 200 people in their shift, and sometimes it starts becoming just a number, right? Like you have a lot of people, and so a lot of times we train them. I always say, like, for you, that customer may be one of 200 or one of 500, but for them, they only eat three meals. Exactly, one of 3 meals. And I say, like, just when you go to another restaurant, and imagine, a lot of us love food, and it's something we look forward to, right? You go to work, and then you're like, okay, when's lunch? I'm going to eat this for lunch. And if you happen to, for us, if we're fortunate for the customer to choose, hey, I want to go to Jack in the Box, and if you give them that great experience, or at least the professional standard that we expect, then they go happy, and then that they can enjoy that day, right? Versus if it's not something that's great or is below standard, then it's a third of their a big part of their day can be ruined, right? Just from having a bad lunch, or if you order out to go drive through and you're missing an
If I'm
item.
missing ketchup, it's like all over. I mean, I've turned around and I've gone back for that. Yeah,
Yeah,
not that that ever happened with Jack in the Box.
no, I'm sure it has. I think it's a continuous learning process. I know, they serve hundreds of people, and even we go, I try to go at least 2-3 times a week to different restaurants, probably closer to like one restaurant a week. And I order food, and I get stuff, and I'm just like, a regular customer until the window. Then I'm a different, person. But, when you order and everything, the whole ordering process all the way up to the window is pretty much similar. But by the time I get to the window, it's not like they can remake a new burger for me or anything like that. So I still oftentimes get the same experience. And that's when we'll, a lot of times it's good and sometimes it's not. And so we'll, have to communicate and kind of constantly train about those professionalism standards, and just
Yeah, and the question that just came in, I think it's related to that, is, what is the typical length between the time you get the application and the time people actually start their first day?
Okay, so we actually have a pretty quick, because we're smaller, we only have 7 restaurants, so it can move quickly up the chain. So, like, let's say someone applies today, we get the application, the manager looks at it, they can, call them back and have this conversation with the employee. And then, so typically it just depends on, they ask, questions, when would you like to start, things like that. And if it's, okay, I want to start as soon as possible, then they can quickly contact the district manager, schedule a phone interview as quick, quick as possible, which may be a day. Then the district manager will make that decision, and then yeah, they can start. And then they put them on to basically the next shift. So usually the schedule is set for the week, and so they'll put them on that next shift.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. So it sounds like it can be less than a week, which is always, good to get people on the door quickly. Another question that came in from Greg is, how many different documents are in your onboarding package?
Oh wow, we have a lot. It's handbook. Yeah, and also being in California, we have definitely a lot of extra ones that a lot of people don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So with our handbook, I mean, 100, I don't know, it's maybe like 100 pages plus.
Oh, wow.
yeah, man, handbooks, once you go to the attorneys and get all those things.
And you're an attorney by,
Yeah,
by education.
exactly. So we have a lot of, and it's also a lot of notice documents of like what's up to coming. So like, we have them sign, documents of if they've been hurt or if they've gotten their paycheck, all their meals and breaks. So those are all kind of documents they don't have to necessarily sign, but it's like, hey, notice, with COVID, now you have to give them a couple pages of documents there, handbooks, maybe 20, 30 pages, your application, then your, I-9, you have a lot of forms. So.
Oh my gosh, I bet. A question that came in from Graham is, what's your process for ensuring a good match between the role you're hiring for and the candidates who are applying?
Yeah, so I think just the double interview process. And then what we do at our restaurants is kind of like a lot of places is a trial for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do a assessment at the 3-month mark. And so I think for the typically non-COVID, we would have the manager face to face. And so it's usually easier to kind of gauge somebody's skill, or even like, hey, show me an example of when, you worked on the grill or fryer or whatever it is, customer service. Over the phone, it's a lot harder. And so we rely on that 3-month assessment
And
as kind of our backstop.
what percent of people typically make it past that 3-month assessment?
I would say most people, so I would say, very, very few people, sorry. And that's why the turnover is so high. It's like, once you hit the 3-month assessment, then like, I would say like 95% of the people will go on, year plus, like have a pretty decently long career with us or time with us. But if you don't hit the so I would say like 75-80% of the people won't hit the 3-month mark.
Okay, so my understanding is only 20 to 25% will hit the 3-month mark. And of those,
Yes.
if they make it there and they pass the assessment, then like 95% make it a full year.
Or more, yeah.
Okay.
Or multiple
Cool.
years, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've had some people there for, you said, like a decade, right?
Yeah, we've had people, 15, probably even longer. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Like I had people that, working there that when I was 14, 13, working at the restaurant as well, I saw them, and like their kids, like I'm working in the Jack in the Box industry, their kids are actually working for us as well.
Oh wow,
It's been
that's
that long,
awesome.
yeah.
Multi-generational.
Yeah, for both my father and their parents, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy just, having been in the business since 1989, I'm sure you've seen many generations of people come through. I want to be respectful of your time, and we're hitting that half-hour mark. But one last question that we received is, what do you recommend for staying up to date on industry news? Like, are there any magazines, newsletters, podcasts that you really like?
So we do the franchise. There's that multi-franchise magazine.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for us, a lot of it is, so we have a group chat, I guess, with all the Jack in the Box operators. And so we have it's called NFA, so National Franchise Association for Jack in the Box. And so they have full organization that basically has, full-time staff. And so they have a newsletter. And so they disseminate all the information that's going on in the industry. And so I think for us, it's a little easier because we have, this basically association that kind of keeps us up to date on pretty much everything across the board as it relates to Jack in the Box, fast food, whether it's political, laws that are going to happen, to safety standards, to kind of what's the best mask, So
That's awesome.
But yeah, I think I'm sure there's plenty of podcasts and things like that. I don't usually typically go outside because the NFA kind of takes care of all the things related to Jack in the Box, because there's just so much information out there that you don't know if it actually applies to your restaurant or your industry. And so
yeah, that makes total sense. Well, anyway, thank you so much, Philip. This was incredibly insightful. It was great having you on the webinar today. And
thank you for having me.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right, thank you.